Test 1 2 3 4. Test 1 2 3 4. Test 1 2 3 4. Test. Test 1 2 3. Okay, loud and clear. Everything okay? 5x5 on the audio. Not sure what that is. Okay. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Silver Bullion Television, SBTV. I'm your host, Patrick Vieira. Once again, guys, if you are new to this channel or you have not already done so, please do subscribe. Go ahead, click on the bell to be notified on new updates, and do give us a thumbs up if you like what we do. And you can also find us on social media. Our website is www.silverbullion.com.sg. Our Facebook page, Silver Bullion SG. On Twitter, we're pretty active on Twitter. You can find us at Silver Bullion PL for Private Limited. Or if you just want the audio version, you can find us at bit.ly/SBTV iTunes or SBTV Spotify, depending on your preference. So, hello again. Thank you for being up tonight and being here with us. 2 King, 3 Queens, loud and clear. Thank you. Guardian of Light, yeah, 5x5. Got to figure out what that one means. Okay, loud and clear. All right, thank you. Max, thanks for being here. Andrew O, sounds good. Thanks for being here. PM Ruckus, hola, how are you doing? Okay, so yeah, silver and gold had a pretty darn interesting week last week. I mean, we've seen it up and down, and I think we even saw the ratio come down from 93 to about 87. It was bouncing in the 87, 88 range. So first thing I want to do is go ahead and take a look at the silver and gold price right now. So I'll head on over to our website. So silverbullion.com.sg. We are celebrating our 10th year anniversary. So we've been around. I've been around a lot longer than just 10 years, but company's been around 10 years. It's doing well. It's well established. US dollar, silver down 2 cents. Not too bad. It was down about 11 cents this morning, actually. So it's come back a little. Gold is at 1425.04. So it's up a little, $6.54. And looking at the ratio here, we see it still in the 87 range, 87.9. So all in all, not too bad. It's hanging on. So that's pretty significant for silver to move that quick from 93 to 87 range. But as we've been telling you, silver is pretty volatile. If gold moves, silver is going to move more. It's just that for some reason or another, this time it took silver a little bit longer to get going. Peter Wilson, good day. How are you doing? Gary D, hello. How are you doing, Gary? So one guy who hopped on the gold train, pretty big name, is Ray Dalio. And he says it's time to buy gold, and that's pretty interesting coming from Ray Dalio. So he says it's time to buy gold. We're all just thinking you've done well for yourself, obviously, but what took you so long? So Bridgewater's boss thinks the metal is a good way to diversify in these troubled times. Absolutely. The article goes on to read, as the founder and CEO of Bridgewater, the world's largest hedge fund company by assets under management, Ray Dalio knows a thing or two about capital markets, and as a macro strategist, he is well versed in the ebbs and flows of broader economic action. Thus, it usually pays to listen when Dalio speaks. Okay, that's a nice picture. He looks like he's wondering what are we doing and why aren't we investing with his company. But nonetheless, lately Dalio has been ratcheting up his warnings about broadening market and economic risks. Indeed, as we discussed in February, he apparently fears that a recession could be on the horizon, and his gloomy forecast has continued to the present from that time in February. Apparently, the risk of economic turmoil has actually become sufficiently high as to make the hedge fund billionaire a gold bug. Ray, welcome aboard. Glad to have you. He goes on to say, I think investors today are mostly leveraged long, meaning they own risky assets and have substantially leveraged those assets through company buybacks. This is true. We've seen this over and over. Private equity and so on. In order to diversify against this, meaning reduce exposure to leveraged long portfolios, investors should look to other stores of wealth and areas that have intrinsic diversification. There's a lot of truth to this insight. Investors clearly are still leveraged heavily to the long side, while companies have been engaging in behavior that is effectively doing the same. As a consequence, investors have been exposed to highly levered positions. This is a very risky place to be when the world seems to be spinning out of control. One last part, cash is not king. Many investors turn to cash as a hedge when things go south in capital markets. Dalio does not think this is a good idea, as he told Goldman's Nathan. Um, People seem to think that going to cash reduces risk, but that's only the case from a standard deviation perspective when interest rates are negligible, below the inflation rate, below the inflation rate, nominal GDP growth, and you pay taxes on that, you're not getting any return. Cash over the long run is the worst performing asset class and therefore the riskiest asset class. I think most of us already know when we are in cash, and especially long term we're holding cash, it loses purchasing power. So holding cash long term, probably not the best of ideas, as Mr. Dalio is stating here. The chief, Eric Sprott, said he purchased 10 million of physical silver in last week for his personal purchase, not referring to anything. You know, I've been hearing that. In fact, you were one of the guys that notified me. I have not had time to look into that, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's what Sprott went and did. We'll have to look into that. U.S. Treasuries run out of money next next month. I've been hearing a little bit about that too. I've been hearing September is going to be a pretty critical month as well. We're going to find out some things, I guess, short term and during the summer. Okay, ride the curve. I was wondering the most efficient way to purchase gold and silver is bars versus coins. Yes, but what are other rules to minimize the commissions and added costs beyond the metal itself? What you want to do is whenever you buy, you want to look at the spread if possible. Those will always change, but of course there's the premium. The premium, the base of the premium is always set by the mint, meaning sometimes you're going to wonder why is this we see spot price here, why is this bullion company selling at another price or a higher price? A lot of it the mints, they sell above spot, and so it's already starting above spot when it gets to your dealer. I think it's really preference, but bars are typically going to have be closer to spot than coins will. But to answer your question, commissions, there shouldn't really be any commissions unless you're dealing with a guy who is in the middle. Typically, the guy in the middle, he's going to charge you commissions because he doesn't have direct access to the bullion, which is why you want to go to the dealer if you can. The dealer, usually there's no commission already at that point. So be wary of who you deal with. If they're telling you commissions, chances are they're not further or deeper in the loop than you might want them to be. It's just my opinion from what I see. Let's see. Do I have coffee on and warming up the door? That's a good one. I actually I just have ice water here, so I should be having coffee. Okay, let's see. The chief Eric Sprott has Eric Sprott mentioned if he's making any gold purchases. You know what? I will probably go and take a look at that a bit later on. But something from Kitco. It was a bit earlier in the week, so the prices in this video they're a bit off, but the reasonings of why he is saying silver is going up, I think they're still valid. So I'll go ahead and play this clip from Kitco earlier last week.
Could silver prices finally be about to break out? Joining me today is Peter Hugg, Global Trading Director over at Kitco Metals. Pete, thank you so much for joining us.
It's always a pleasure.
So, we were talking offline and you were saying, look, something could really be shaping up and happening finally in the silver market. What are you seeing?
Well, I mean, if you just look at the parameters of the last 2 days, gold yesterday again was testing the 1420 range, and our sort of scenario on gold that we need 1422 to break on a close for the next leg up. So we've been selling into the 1420 area and buying into the low 1400s. But yesterday with gold at 1418, silver was trading down at approximately 1520, 25 range. Today, gold's down $10, currently trading about 1409, and silver's trading at 1560. So it's up about 35 cents, with gold down 10. So I think people are starting to catch on to the fact that if this market is overall in a bullish trend, which I do believe it is, that silver is extremely undervalued relative to gold, and now we're starting to see some retail demand coming into the silver market.
Silver and gold, silver and gold.
Okay, I'll spare you that corny clip, but yeah, it does look like the retail market has been picking up. We're seeing it on our end. We're seeing it on two sides. We're seeing people who are selling into the upside, which is kind of unusual. Maybe these are guys that they've been in silver for a while. They've seen it finally go up, and maybe they've had enough, so they want to get out. And then we're seeing a bunch of people pile in as well. So there's always two sides to that trade. Somebody is going to sell it. Someone's also going to buy it. Okay. So let me play one more clip for you from Peter Schiff. He actually had something interesting to say. I'll go ahead and roll that first and then get back to some of your questions.
The significance of the move is that gold was down $8. So not only did silver have a relatively large move, although not large enough to normally cause a silver stock to rise by 10%. But what was significant about it is it rose as the price of gold was falling. And this could signal, and it was looking to me technically that we saw some indications of this last week. I added to my own silver stocks last week. But what it looked to me like was that this trend was about to change. And we're still above 90 to 1, but we're close to getting back to 90 to 1 even. But this is still an incredibly good opportunity to buy physical silver, to buy silver-oriented stocks. But what I think this is showing me is that the bull market in gold is getting ready to kick into a higher gear, because one of the aspects of the bull market that hadn't kicked in was silver.
One of the aspects to the bull market that didn't kick in was silver. And Yeah, we all noticed that. We saw gold going up, and excuse me, we were kind of wondering what's going on with silver, and but silver has caught up, just as most people always say, including us, that silver is more volatile. When gold goes up, silver will follow, and in some cases, it also seems like silver leads gold, but that's another debate. But the good thing is we did see silver going up, and again the ratio has come down in the high 87, low 88 range, so that's a good thing. It's shaved off about 5 ounces there, so I think most of us are liking that. uh Ride the curve, thanks for that answer. So to find a bullion dealer, I would search where? Typically you can just go ahead and search gold and silver dealer in Google, and Google is smart enough to figure out where you're at, and probably list some dealers there. Usually guys who buy ads are going to be on the top, as we all know, but those guys are not necessarily the right places to go. I mean, even we see guys that they're at the top, but they're not dealers. So you have to search a bit for that. Try to make sure they have a shop that shows they're real. Try to make sure they store, again, that shows they're real and people are actively using their services. And probably even more important than that, if they do store, try and make sure, or I would say definitely make sure, that they own the vault that you are going to store in, because the last thing you want to do is be storing in a third party vault, because the bullion dealer has no control over your gold and silver in there. I mean, they have some control, but ultimately the vault makes the rules, and the vault is the one that goes ahead and gets the insurance and whatnot. So you want your bullion dealer to own the vault that you store in. The chief, if when silver goes up, we should all thank Eric Sprott and Gregor. Yeah, I thank Gregor, but Eric Sprott, yeah, he's playing a pretty big role in it as well. Uh, I think if silver goes up, we should all be thanking each other for finally finding the news that we need to hear to wake up to what is really going on, because I think we all know there is a lot of news out there that just is not 100% truthful. So we're at a time in our lives where we all need to dig a little bit deeper, and then dig a little bit more to find out sometimes truth, or to find out things that are legit, or find out the best things that can work for us. Carl Patordi, haven't seen you here before. How you doing, Carl? Schiff is great. Yeah, he is. I mean, you just got to get through the ranting a bit, and then usually Schiff will give you a few nuggets here and there. And if things did good, he told you so. If things did bad, he told you so. But that's just Peter Schiff. I like him as well. We'll also point you to a couple of incredible tweets by Roy Sibag. This is coming from the chief on Thursday. They're totally mind blowing. Back in a minute after. Sure. Thanks, Chief. Appreciate that. Robert Preston, my best deals come from coin shows from private dealers. I buy mostly gold and silver eagles. Premiums are a bit lower now. Also, no records and no taxes, cash and stash. That is true. One of the benefits about gold and silver, at least on our end, that we see, is it is a tax shelter in some ways. It's not taxable, but a lot of times what you can do is, if you can find places that collateralize your gold and silver, you can take a loan out on it, and you can get into your funds without being taxed as well, doing it that way, because the loans against your gold and silver, they're not taxable. So it's a way to get into it and get some of your I don't want to say money back, but it's a way to redeploy some of your assets. Let's see. He also, okay, Eric Sprott is buying a silver mining company. Yeah. So my partner Vincent, if you see the silver bullion, and if you didn't see me typing anything, sometimes that's Vincent. He'll help me out with answering some of your chat. So Vincent, thanks. Buy Darth Vader giant Pez dispenser for. Actually, I do have a Darth Vader. There's silver, 1 gram silver in the Darth Vader. Okay, I'm telling you guys all my secrets, right? Okay, Royce bag, BOE premiums on gold. Local London confirms someone is buying size. Yeah, that one's pretty interesting. I haven't had a chance to check it, but I think Alistair McLeod, I think his name is, he's been saying China has been buying silver, which has been pushing up the price. And then we have Ted Butler. He's been saying it's actually JP Morgan. So I need to look into that a bit more and see what's going on. Maybe it's both. Who knows? But something pretty big was going on with silver last week. As far as the rest of the commodities, I want to go ahead and take a look at those and see how they're doing. Last week, there was a lot of green in this area. Today, not as much. I guess, yeah, their commodities are having a bit of a tough time again. When we look at the metals overall, yeah, gold a little bit down, silver a little bit down, not much. Platinum a little bit down, copper holding. But the main thing, if you look at all of these trends, absolutely up. It's all going up. Everything is going up as we've been seeing. Even copper is starting to make a turn here. Palladium, that's a bit of a mystery right now. I mean, palladium does its own thing, platinum does its own thing, but to see all metals going up except for palladium, that's I'm not gonna say unusual, but it's a bit disappointing. I would have thought palladium would have held on as well. A few years back, platinum was more than gold. Then palladium passed gold and was more than gold, or still is more than gold per ounce. And we're seeing gold coming up on palladium. So it's going to be interesting to see if it'll cross and if gold will take the top spot again over platinum and palladium. So we'll see how that goes. Min Chin Xiao, our coin shows a thing in Singapore. We usually have one coin show per year. But for my taste, it's too commercialized. You don't have, for the collectibles, it's not, the market is not that big when these guys come down to the coin show. They're mostly the newer collectibles, New Zealand mint things, Perth mint things. You can get those anywhere really, especially here in Singapore. But it's the other coins, the older coins. If you have an older coin from China or Japan or from US that carry between 70 to 90% silver, I think those are the coins that the guys are looking for. Even when it comes to notes, people will collect notes as well. But I think for the most part, when guys show up with things from Perth Mint, New Zealand Mint, those, it doesn't really do anything because they're abundant here. So I hope that answers your question. There is a market though. Let's see. Lieutenant Colonel, how you doing, sir? Dalio is a very smart man. Take his advice. Yeah, he's done well. I mean, he's absolutely I would even say shaped some markets in some cases. He knows what he's doing. BK Sinclair has so many steroids he lends them out to Rob Kirby. Hey, be nice. Sinclair and Kirby, they're pretty good. They offset each other pretty well, and I guess you could throw Holter into the mix. I think Holter is the counterweight to Sinclair. But they all have pretty good thoughts on what's going on or what's coming down the road. I think it just really depends on how I don't want to say fringe, but how much you think there are more things going on in the background than what we know, or if you should just kind of hold the middle ground and walk a narrow path and stay safe in that zone, or if you should venture out and really look at what's going on around you, because when you do you're going to see a lot of things that you could easily start to connect the dots on. And I think that's where Holter and Sinclair, anyway, they do offer a good balance to each other. Full name: why does gold always open higher during the Asian session, then drops when Australia starts trading every day? You know what? Full name. That's a good question, because I recall years ago, uh 2014, 15, for some reason, always around the 3, 4 o'clock time in Singapore time, when London markets open up, for sure, silver and gold down. I mean, without miss, for days and days and weeks. It was almost like clockwork. So I'm not sure why that happens, but we do notice that as well. It's something, I can't exactly tell you why, but we do notice it. Absolutely notice it. Okay. Miap Baller. So is gold, buffaloes, and ASE not taxable in any amount? You know what? That really depends where you're at. I can tell you from where we are in Singapore. Oh, sorry, ASE. I thought I was looking at gold eagles. In Singapore, buffaloes are not taxed. Silver eagles are not taxed, but it depends where you're at. Every country, every state, every jurisdiction has their own rules as far as what's going to be taxed and what's not going to be taxed. So you need to look at your own area, and you need to look at the areas that you might want to be storing in if you do choose to store. Yes, Peter Schiff for Gabriel. Okay, I don't know if we'd want that, but he's okay. Peter's okay. Lieutenant Colonel Peter Schiff makes me sick. Okay, Peter Schiff is not okay. Just kidding. I'm a silver stacker. Trump bash. Okay. That is one thing, Peter Schiff. He does have to comment on Trump every day. No matter what Trump does, he will try to step above, overdo him, or do something above him, I should say. But another pretty interesting bit of news I came across, I want to share with you guys, because I think this is pretty significant, and we need to dissect it. And I'm depending on all of your smarts to help me dissect what this article has to say. For me, I find it pretty disturbing, pretty alarming. From Reuters, came out last week, late last week. Reinvent international monetary order or face Chinese dominance. That's some pretty heavy words. Reinvent the monetary order or face Chinese dominance. I tell you what, I don't think I haven't seen anyone say anything like this ever. But France's finance minister said on Tuesday the post-war international monetary order needed to be reinvented or become increasingly dominated by China. That's pretty foretelling. I mean, they're letting us know that things are going to go by way of China if we don't change the monetary order. I think that's pretty significant. So we'll go on and read it. The pillars of that order, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and its sister institution, the World Bank, have been controlled by the United States and Europe since their inception at the Bretton Woods Conference in New Hampshire in July 1944. Somewhat true. I agree with that. But globalization, the growing populist backlash, we're seeing that against it, and the rise of big new economic powers like China are increasingly putting that order to test. He goes on to say the Bretton Woods order as we know it has reached its limits. What does that exactly mean, has reached its limits? Are we come to a point where the world cannot take on any more debt? Or does it mean something? I'm not sure exactly how I'm supposed to read into that. So again, I need your smarts on this one to help dissect what this man is saying. Standing skeleton, the international order and the big China push. You know what? I'd have to agree. I think there is some sort of a China push that seems to be going on. We'll have to see how this plays out, but at the same time, it may not be in our best interest to just sit back and see how it plays out. Because once this happens, there's no coming back. Okay, we'll go on. The alternative. What alternative? The alternative we have is now clear. What alternative are we talking about? Do we have another system that's waiting in the wings? Either we reinvent Bretton Woods or it risks losing relevance and eventually disappearing. Again, that's some pretty profound words that he's saying. Richard alert. Okay, yeah. I mean, we this is what we do. We try and do these things to let you guys know, and then hopefully we can get feedback from you guys. All put our heads together and figure out what's going on. Let's see. JP Morgan stacking silver for China. David, well, who knows? Who knows? Hard to say. Let's see. Agreed on Schiff. Oddly enough, he's often right in regards to the useless antics of the Federal Reserve. Yeah, that is true. Schiff, he does have a good finger on the pulse, but he's also if his delivery was just a bit better sometimes, I think maybe he may get more people to follow him. But hey, who am I to say anything? He's got already millions following him, right? So he's doing his thing. He's doing a good job. But I don't want to detract too much from this article because it does seem pretty significant. Lemire said that while Bretton Woods has defined the international economic order of the second half of the 20th century, that is true, the first part of this century may be defined by China's new Silk Road project. That could be true as well. China's new Silk Road project, they're reconnecting places all over the world, and they're not doing it for free, guys. They're going to have a say in what's going on. They're going into places, different countries, helping to develop it, and they are going to have a claim or a stake in. I think every country along that road that they're building. The Belt and Road Initiative, as it is formally called, envisions rebuilding the old Silk Road to connect China with Asia, Europe, and beyond with massive infrastructure spending largely financed by China. That is true. China is basically spending on the infrastructure, building it, and then these countries have to repay China. And if these countries cannot repay China, China takes over certain aspects or assets that country has. And we're seeing it here. I think there's some big a lot of uneasiness going on in Philippines because I think the president of the Philippines has agreed to let China do certain things there. Depending on how you look at it, it's good or bad. It depends on how you look at it. But the worrying part is you put yourself at risk if you default. So I think that's the part people are concerned with. What happens if we default? Because it looks like China's agenda is if people default, then they take over against certain assets, perhaps. Unless we are able to reinvent Bretton Woods, the new Silk Roads might become the new world order. So every time we see these things, we got to bring in this guy and let him have his piece. New world order. Where have we heard that word before, right? And Chinese standards on state aid, on access to public procurements, on intellectual property could become the new global standards. So a lot of things are at risk here. I mean, or at least the way we know things could change, or how we understand or how we look at things, how we view things, how we respect things. May change a bit if these things continue. So it is a bit of a concern here. Let's see. All the U.S. tech is moving to Israel. Somewhat. I wouldn't say all, but I know U.S. and Israel they do work together, especially on tech. Israel is leaps and bounds ahead of everyone else, especially when it comes to tech, communications, and spying. I'll just say the word. Okay. China building countries and the U.S. destroys countries. Um, it again, that depends how you look at it. I mean, yes, the U.S. does use force. I mean, no denying that. But in some cases, I don't want to say it's justified, but I think in some ways they both build countries and they both also destroy countries. If not destroy it today, eventually economically it may be destroyed. So I think actually both play a role in that. Continuing on, IMF acting manager director David Litton said at the conference that the fund had a duty to reflect the rising power of emerging markets. Yes, emerging markets are getting strong. Lemire said the reform priorities of Bretton Woods institutions should be focused on fighting climate change, curbing rising inequalities, and regulating the emergence of digital giants. Is he talking about crypto? Probably. He added that the arrival of new IMF chief after Christine Lagarde, who departed to head the European Central Bank, created an opportunity to rethink the fund's mandate. While its shareholders. Okay, so there are shareholders to the IMF. Is that what this is saying? Needed to ensure it had enough resources for the next crisis. Okay, shareholders. Maybe they mean countries in this context as opposed to individuals. Don't know. We'll see how this one goes ahead and plays out. But I mean that article is pretty interesting what it has to say. Where if we don't reinvent the current system, then we're going to see China in a sense taking over. I couldn't tell you 100% if that's going to be good or bad because the system that we're in right now is starting to fall apart anyway. So, we're going to have to watch this very, very closely. Let's take a look at some of your questions. Israel tech sector run by Russians. Can't comment on that. I wouldn't know. I would not know about that. Let's see. China, standing skeleton. China, like cryptos, do we count them and those of the digital currencies pure? And do we count into the total treasuries the menial amounts of satoshis and the thousands of rollout cryptos? You know what? I when I read Rickards' book, and I'll go into some of the notes or excerpts later on, IMF does acknowledge that they have to do something different and they are looking at cryptos. And a lot of the crypto guys, they were happy with that. But according to Rickards, what he's saying is, make no mistake, what the IMF is saying is that they are not in favor of current cryptos. They are looking more at sovereign cryptos. So how that's going to play out with Bitcoin, I don't know. I just tend to look at it this way. When people had gold and then fiat came out, gold still exists. Gold still has a role to play. So even if, let's say, they come out with sovereign currencies, Bitcoin would still have a role to play. I'm looking at it the same way as when fiat came out and the outlook for gold. So I'm looking at it again in the same way where if a sovereign crypto comes out, what's the outlook for Bitcoin? So there's still value in gold even though money went the other way. So why not, if a sovereign coin comes out, there's still value for Bitcoin? We'll have to see how that one plays out as well. But speaking about Bitcoin, Secretary Mnuchin, he came on and he had some pretty strong words to say as well.
Last month, the Libra Association, a consortium of 28 businesses, including a Facebook subsidiary, announced that it is developing a cryptocurrency called the Libra. The Treasury Department has expressed very serious concerns that Libra could be misused by money launderers and terrorist financiers. Cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin have been exploited to support billions of dollars of illicit activity like cybercrime, tax evasion, extortion, ransomware, illicit drugs, human trafficking. Many players have attempted to use cryptocurrencies to fund their malign behavior. This is indeed a national security issue.
Crypto, so Mnuchin, he said crypto can be used for illicit activity. I tell you what, so is fiat. Fiat has been used a bunch of times. Why do you think we have KYC AML now? Because know your customer and anti-money laws, because they know fiat is also used for illicit activity. And is this a national threat? I think it could be. I think it could be. Even a while back, we had Danielle DiMartino Booth, who used to be from the Dallas Fed. She said the Fed is going to have to be looking at their own crypto coin for national security purposes. So I'm with her in that corner. Okay, to answer one of the questions, Standing Skeleton Randy Frasha, sovereign meaning Bitcoin. No, these are more like Fed coins. It looks like central banks are going to create their own coins. So central banks create their own coins. Then what happens with Bitcoin? So it's a question a lot of people are asking. But again, for my taste, the way I look at it is when central banks created fiat, gold still played a role. We didn't see gold just disappear. Gold is still considered money, excuse me, by a lot of people. We do, in fact, right? So in that sense, if sovereign does create its own crypto central bank coin, I do think, of course, Bitcoin is still going to have a role to play. The same way, again, like how gold has a role to play. So again, this is something that we'll have to see how it plays out. But sovereign coin meaning central banks are creating their own coins. Okay. So I think you guys, I hope you folks had a chance to watch the James Rickards interview that we had earlier this week. It was pretty interesting. My thoughts on it, I wish we could have gotten in more questions. Some of Jim's answers, well detailed, a little bit on the lengthy side, some of them. So we couldn't get in as much questions as we wanted to, but I didn't want to interrupt Jim in order to let him say what he needs to say in the full context of what he's saying, in order for all of you to get it, to understand what he says and why he's saying it. So, for that reason, I wish we could have asked more questions, but we needed to get the full context of things so we can all understand what he's saying a bit better. Min Chin Xiao, it was a great thanks. Thank you. It was interesting. His book is even more interesting. And one thing he did have to talk about was MMT, modern monetary theory. I think we've all heard the word, but maybe we don't quite understand what it is. So I'll go ahead and play Jim's explanation of MMT.
Now, along comes MMT, because you asked about MMT. What does MMT say? Modern monetary theory. And I explain to people, first of all, it's not modern. This goes back to the early 1900s, 1905 in particular. And it's not much of a theory because it doesn't have any empirical support, no experiments to support it. But the idea is that there's that basically you merge the Treasury and the Fed. Now, these are legally separate entities. Treasury is part of the executive branch. The Fed's an independent agency. But you kind of merge them and you just say, look, we can spend as much as we want. And if we don't have the revenue, just issue bonds. And don't worry about the bond market because the Fed can buy the bonds and monetize it, put it on their balance sheet, wait 20 years or 30 years or whatever it is, and get their money back. What's the problem? Well, when you put it that way, it's a hard question to answer. Like, yeah, what's the problem? Legally, there's no limit on that. There are debt ceilings, but they continually get raised, and the Fed can print as much money as they want. And the modern monetary theorists point to Bernanke. Bernanke wouldn't agree with this, but what did Bernanke do? He increased the money supply by $4 trillion between 2008 and 2014 to prop up Jamie Dimon's bonus and bail out the banks. Well, the modern monetary theorists, but most of whom are progressives, the leading thinker is Professor Stephanie Kelton of Stony Brook, part of the State University of New York, who's also the advisor to Bernie Sanders' 2020 campaign. She says, look, if Bernanke can increase the debt increase the money supply $4 trillion to prop up the banks. Why can't we increase it $4 trillion for the Green New Deal, or Medicare for all, or tuition for all, or free healthcare, free childcare, etc.?
Free, free, free. Everyone likes free, right? Well, sometimes free is not free. But what do you think? Is the modern monetary theory, or MMT as it's known, good or bad? My take on it, I do think we're going to see more of this coming out, especially with the elections coming up in 2020. Democrats' platform, or I shouldn't say platform, but a lot of the people in the Democratic Party, they do want to give things away for free. They want to wipe out student loans, as an example. They want to help in certain areas here and there to help people with their finances. But in short, the Democratic Party does seem that they are going towards MMT, and it does seem like unfortunately it's pandering votes. It's a way to get people to vote for them. We'll give you this free, we'll give you that free. So just be mindful that nothing really is free. It's going to have to be paid at some point in time. It's not a knock against the Democrats. It's just to say that this is the area that they're looking at to get people to support them. So that's their deal. We'll see how it goes. Full name: did he not work for the CIA? Absolutely. It's that he sprinkled and salted that book Aftermath with things that he did in CIA, and I'm going to go over one of them when he belonged to this organization called CFIUS. CIFIUS is the acronym. I'll go over that in the notes section. Excuse me. Too bad it was a Rickards book tour interview, and so no chance to ask him any of those Rob Kirby questions. The chief, you know what? I saw your questions, and I tell you what, I wanted to ask those, but if I did, it was going to be like the last question, just in case he decided to shut it off. But I mean, yeah, it was more about the book tour, and it is Jim Rickards. So how often are you going to get that chance? So it was about the book tour. Read the book. There were a lot of interesting things in there. I think Jim explained quite a bit of it well, especially MMT, because I know a bunch of us have heard about it, but we didn't quite understand MMT, and that's basically what it is. Go ahead and print the money. Don't worry about it. That, in a nutshell, that's what it is. Jim also went on to say that the banks are still not safe, and I'll go ahead and play that one for you.
I had this debate with the CEO and board of directors of Morgan Stanley. I did a private briefing for them, and I talk about this in chapter 8 of the book, kind of tell the story of this briefing. And they were given, obviously a very smart group. They're running one of the biggest banks in the world. And they gave me a lot of pushback. They said, well, Jim, don't you know, our capital is up, our positions are down, we're taking less risk, fewer derivatives, more liquidity, subject to the Volcker rule, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, yes, that's all true. The bank individually is safer than it was in 2008. But you're part of a system. You're part of a bigger system. And the system as a whole is much more vulnerable and much more risky. And if that system collapse begins, you're going to go down with it.
Okay, so if that happens, you're going to go down with it. So even though the bank you're with might be good, let's say they pass the so-called stress test, the thing is they are still part of a connected system, and you're going to go down with it. Not so positive words he had to say, but nonetheless, it is words that we should hear and we should be made aware of, so that we can do what's best for us in order to help our family, maybe even help our friends. Who knows? But, we'll see what happens with the bank. Still, it doesn't look good. But free money looks good, according to David Anderson. Richard, he wants to sell books. Well, of course, he's written 4 books, or 4 main books. And, of course, he would like to sell books. But, I mean, in fairness, the information that he gives, It's really good. I do hope you have a chance to pick up his book. It's well worth it. Um, let's see. I don't see anything wrong with him wanting to sell a book as long as the book makes a good argument and makes sense. Min Chin, yeah, actually it does. It makes a lot of sense. In fact, I'm going to get to the notes and excerpts in just a bit. He fits right in with Bix, Cliff, and Snippy. We've been trying to get Bix for a while. Can't seem to lock down a date. Cliff, if you mean Cliff High, he's had some right calls, but he's always definitely. I mean, he seems to be on the far end. I mean, overly positive. But it's what he sees, So it's what he sees. It's what he believes, and again, only time will tell. Standing skeleton, to each his own. I choose digital and virtual properties equating to risk-free hard assets. I see fiat undergoing ridiculous collapse. Yeah, ridiculous collapse. Though there'll be irony, the billionaires will cry while they laugh. Billionaires, they're gonna be okay. They can do things that the average Joe cannot, and they think a bit different from the rest of us. I'm not saying they're any better, any smarter. It's just that they see things in a different way, and their life allows them to see life a different way from the way we see life. Okay. David Anderson, Deutsche Bank is secretly being bailed out. You know what? I think call it what it is. It's sort of a bailout. Yeah, I'd have to agree there. Let's see. Standing skeleton, yes, Patrick, central, but unquestionably global banking a big problem. Yeah, global banking is going to be a big problem. We just seen the French minister saying, "Hey, if we don't change things, China's going to start to take over, or it's going to start to slide China's way." So, and I don't think the West is prepared for that. I just don't think the West is prepared for that. Kaui Kanekoa, how's it, Patrick? Aloha, Kaui. How you doing? Glad you're here. What island, by the way? Sorry. What island are you at? The chief, stay away from Big Weird and Cliff High over the rainbow and their theories of secret tunnels from the Grand Canyon to Antarctica to shuttle aliens. Yeah, I gotta admit, I see some of those and I watch it. I'm not gonna say I'm totally convinced on it or even partly convinced on it, but it's I like it's good entertainment. I mean, whether or not it's true, again, we'll wait and see to find out. But until then, I don't really believe it, but it's nice, nice entertainment. So I guess I have to thank them for that. I'm not going to not going to bash them for that. I'm going to thank them for that. Mention Sal, whether his argument or the future he foresees would come true, he still presents a coherent picture that I can't dismiss. That is true. He's been places that none of us have never even heard of, within agencies of the CIA and government. So he knows. And the interview with Rob Kirby did label him a globalist tool. And I don't know if that was really right or wrong or fair or not fair to say, but I do know that Mr. Rickards, he's been in places that we can only dream of or that we can't even imagine. Especially in the book, he does go ahead and talk about some of these things, and I tell you what, you will really be amazed with his stories, and a lot of it is true. In fact, all of it is true, and it makes sense, and it does kind of lay the foundation of the path that we're on and where we're heading. So whether or not he's the thing is this with Jim Rickards, he's letting us know he's not trying to I say steer us to believe any one thing here or there. He kind of sort of really knows what's going down, and he's I would say he's trying to forewarn us or even help us in a way if he can. And I understand guys don't necessarily agree with him, but he's been in places that we've never heard of, and he's coming out of these places, and he's letting us know what's going on way, way, way deep down in the so-called swamp and the alphabet agencies. So I have to give Jim credit for this, and I do thank him for that. Kawi Kaneokoa Kaneohe. Kaneohe is good. I used to work out in Kaneohe out at the Marine base for quite a while. I like it there. Kaneohe. I actually miss Hawaii's a good place. I know there's even in Hawaii there's some news going on as far as Mauna Kea has been making big news. Anyway, that's a different topic. There's some things going on also in Hawaii. But anyway, Dave Prosner, I'll drink my Romulan Star Trek Romulan. Let's see. Various if referring to Rickards, yeah, he's there. He's there. Let's see. Once you're in, you can't leave. Limited hangout. Yeah. Gold standard versus silver standard. I think silver standard. I think if there is a gold, I think silver is going to have to come into play. I do think that some guys argue that if you do a gold-backed crypto, let's say, because you can divide up that gold really into tens of thousands of a fraction, 0.000001. Some guys argue that you may not need silver at that point because gold can be divided very, very almost infinitely. I would say 0.000. It can be really broken down in that way, but practicality, I don't think I don't think it could be done in a way that people could really buy into. I think there will have to be, I think silver will come into play. I'm fairly confident with that. Okay, let's move on. So the other thing with Jim Rickards, I asked him what would he do if gold hit 10,000, and this is what he had to say.
And I explain this to gold holders. Like everyone's like, "Wow, I can't wait till gold gets to $10,000 an ounce." Well, be careful what you wish for, because gold at $10,000 an ounce will only preserve wealth. It doesn't really produce a big profit because the inflation would increase the price of everything else by 5 times. Now, everything else would be destroyed. So I still like my $10,000 gold, even in a hyperinflationary environment, because at least I preserved wealth. You've made a nominal profit, big one, but you haven't made a real profit because of inflation. But everyone else is wiped out. So believe me, you want that gold insurance, you want that gold protection. And the other thing I explained to gold, I'll say gold bugs, it's kind of a little bit of a pejorative term, but I say, people say, I love gold, gold's going up, I want gold to preserve wealth. Yeah, I agree with all that. And I want a gold standard, and they bang the table. And again, I say, be careful what you wish for. You can't make any money on gold with a gold standard. The gold standard means the price of the dollar is fixed to a weight of gold. The way to make money in gold is, if you want to make money in gold, I'm not recommending this for the country, but if you want to make money in gold, you should be rooting for really bad monetary policy, people at the Fed who don't know what they're doing, excessive debt to GDP. You should be rooting for modern monetary theory, all these really bad policies and flawed policymakers. That's what you should be rooting for, because that will cause the price of gold to skyrocket. By the way, that is pretty much what we have. So get your gold now while you still can, because we've got a recipe for disaster.
We've got a recipe for disaster. Yeah, absolutely. So, guys, we always ask people we interview, what would you do if gold hit 10,000? I'm going to ask you now, what will you do if gold hit 10,000? Okay, I'm going to see what you folks have to say about that. Thomas Tubes, there would be no convertibility with thousands of an ounce. You know what? That is true. But I think at that point, what we're looking at is we're not carrying any cash. We're not carrying any gold. We may just have some kind of a card or whatever it's going to be where we're cashless at that point. It can work if we're cashless. If we're cashless, they can divide that gold by however amount they want. So that's something to be aware of also, because I think we're all in agreement that we are headed towards a cashless society. So why silver and gold. The thing is, and I say this a lot, the current monetary system we're in is going to change. We're going to be in a new monetary system. And what's going to make or break a lot of people is how they handle the transition. And it's that transition you definitely want to be having your gold and silver to transfer your wealth into the new monetary system. It's your insurance against any type of fiat collapse. It's your insurance against, when that transition happens. You want to be holding it, you want to be having it, or you even want to be having it even outside of your own jurisdiction for it to be safe. Like I say before, if you think the US is closer to chaos than it's closer to being stable, then you may want to look at holding some of your assets outside of the country. And for us here in Singapore, is Singapore closer to stability or closer to chaos? We are definitely closer to stability on this end. And this is the reason why, like I say, the rich, they do think different. Even the average Joes, I mean, this is why these guys actually do store their gold, store their silver in Singapore, because they want to keep it in a place that they know can weather the storm that's about to happen. And I know it's not for everyone, but again, they do think a bit different, and I'd have to agree with them in this way. Let's see. Gold money. Yeah, okay. I'd rather forecast rooting is for sports writers. Yeah, well, you know what? A problem with that is a lot of the guys who forecast are wrong, and that's a tough one, because when I see these guys forecasting gold is about to break out, silver is about to break out, I want to believe them, but the problem I have with that is, you got to understand, we all know gold and silver has been manipulated, it's been suppressed. So when they plot these points on their chart, gold is here, 1200, 1300, 1100, 1000, 1002. When they plot these points, you're plotting manipulated points, and then you're trying to make a trend line or forecast off of these manipulated points. So for me, that's why when I hear guys say gold's going to break out, silver's going to, I really do not pay attention to it. I tend to look at events, because I think it's events that are going to make gold or silver break out, because these events, I mean, I think it's harder to manipulate a price when you have an event pulling or pushing the price as compared to no events and the markets being manipulated. So when I hear guys say going to break out, I don't necessarily tend to believe that, but that's just me. That's just the way I look at it. Okay. A few more questions and I'll get into notes. Seriously, you gold guys are clowns. Well, we'll see how it plays out. And if a new system comes in, you can always come back to our channel and ask one of us if you can have some of our gold, because maybe you're in a bit of trouble. So you're welcome to come back, but I wouldn't say we're clowns. We do see things from a different viewpoint, and all things are pointing in that direction. Let's see. China makes most of our ammo. You know what? A few years back, I remember that, where China was actually making bullets, and I could not understand what was the deal with that. Why do you let an adversary make your ammunition? You might be firing duds, Why would you do that? Full name, they manipulate to the gold and silver is, I think it's been well documented over and over and over, and we've seen banks time and time again getting nailed down for either spoofing or manipulating the markets in some way. So it's undeniable already at this point. Let's see, event driven. Yes, I'm on board there. Yeah, standing. Yeah, I mean, I think you have to. It's event driven, because when events happen, like I say, it's going to push or pull the price of things already at that point. And I think more so than any type of entity could manipulate the price, because when these things happen, there's a different set of forces that are going to be driving the market. So again, that's why I tend to look at events. But the problem is you cannot forecast events. unless it's things like, let's say, yeah, we do know the current monetary system cannot last forever. So that event we can forecast, and for that forecast, we can take precautions or we can be prepared for it. But for other things, a lot of it, you can't really forecast an event, and therefore, how can you forecast the price? So it's just a bit tough because we're usually we're lagging a bit when we're event based, but at least we're still awake to it. I think that's the main thing. Big event, war in Venezuela. Okay, I need to check on that. Bad primers, they all work together against us. Silver up again today. Okay, Jim Rickards called silver nonsense. You know what? I gotta go and look at that. I don't. If you can let us know where he said that, I'd be interested to take a look at that. Can we forecast war in your? I think that we can. That's bound to happen. I mean, unfortunately, I don't think there's any way around it. Anyway, want to get to some of the notes from Jim Rickards' book Aftermath. Sorry it took so long to get into this portion. I had to. Luckily, we were sent an ebook from his team, and when I first got the ebook, I didn't really pay attention to it. It had something about 50 days, and so I found out what it meant. It was that after 50 days, that book would you wouldn't be able to open that book anymore. So what had happened was I had taken notes on an app for that book, and luckily I put it on a Word doc and turned it into a PDF, because when I tried to open up that book again, it doesn't open anymore. So that book is gone. I don't have access to it. Kind of reminded me of, remember that old Mission Impossible thing where the tape self-destructs in 5 seconds?
This tape will self-destruct in 5 seconds. Good luck.
Yeah, that one. I think you remember that. Okay, so let me dive into some of his notes here. Let me go ahead and make this just a little bit bigger for you guys, and for me also, so I can see it. Okay, he actually started off talking about two Greek mythical monsters, each living on one side of a body of water. One side was Scylla, which is a six-headed razor-sharp-toothed monster, and he likened that to a global recession and stock market decline of 60%. Excuse me. On the other side, Charybdis, which was a vortex, and he likened that to a new global liquidity crisis that the international monetary system will not survive. So basically, we have Jerome Powell, who is the captain of the SS Federal Reserve, and he's trying to navigate the Fed, or basically the economy, between these two monsters, and Powell is literally trying to move it between the lesser of two evils to keep the economy afloat. But there are going to be casualties along the way. The other part which I found interesting was, as I mentioned earlier, CFIUS, which is an acronym for Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. This committee was created under executive order by President Gerald Ford. So let me open up this note here. The Committee of Foreign Investment in the U.S., commonly pronounced CFIUS, this is what they do now. It's a committee that reviews national security implications of foreign investments in U.S. companies or operations. It's chaired by the U.S. Treasury, and CFIUS includes representatives from 16 U.S. department and agencies, including Department of Defense, State and Commerce, and the Department of Homeland Security. So basically, CFIUS is an organization within the government that looks over whenever foreign entities try to invest or buy U.S. assets, and if it has an impact as far as national security. So again, Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, otherwise known as CFIUS. Now, it's kind of a long thing, but in 2013, Jim was informed privately that the Director of National Intelligence wanted CFIUS shut down, and Jim says he never knew why. At that time, it was General James Clapper, who was the director of national intelligence. He wanted CFIUS shut down in 2013. Why are you going to shut down your agency that takes a look at foreign interests in the U.S.? Well, when you go back to 2005, we have this guy, Frank Eustra. Maybe you guys heard of him. He was a wealthy Canadian entrepreneur, and he made money in uranium mining. And his associates formed a company, Eurasia Energy, and they had mining rights in Kazakhstan. And he got President Clinton to assist in his efforts. As Eustra put it, all of my chips almost are on Bill Clinton. He's a wonderful brand, and he can do things and ask for things that no one else can. So Eustra and Bill Clinton advised or visited Almaty, which is the capital of Kazakhstan, and Clinton met with the leader, who was labeled as being a ruthless Kazakh dictator, and basically talked to him and got uranium mining rights over stiff competition from larger, more seasoned mining companies. So again, around this time frame, this company then listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange, the TSX, and they went on to get other mining rights, and they continued to grow. But here's the kicker: during this period, Hillary Clinton was actively seeking the presidency of the United States. Now, this company, this is moving forward in time. They're still trying to grab assets, grab mining rights here, there, different parts of the world. So we fast forwarded a bit, and Hillary Clinton is now actively seeking the presidency of the United States and was deemed by the media to be the inevitable winner. Clinton continued with the Kazakh dictator to keep mining rights. But there were people who opposed, because this guy, he had the Kazakh leader had an atrocious record on civil rights, and there was opposition from senior senators such as Joe Biden. But nonetheless, the Kazakh dictator, that's just how we'll label him because that's how Rickards labeled him. He was invited to attend Clinton Global Initiative, this, that. There's Frank Eustra again. So they're all creating some kind of a little group here. They have a little business that they're trying to build, and it is happening fairly secretly. When Hillary Clinton had become the U.S. Secretary of State under Obama, she immediately became one of the most powerful voices on CFIUS. Okay, so now Hillary is trying to influence CFIUS, and again, CFIUS is a group within the government that looks over foreign investments in the U.S. to see if the investments or the assets they are trying to buy poses a national security threat. So Clinton is now coming in on CFIUS, and she's trying to control it. In a nutshell, what happened was it got through. They basically shut down CFIUS. Hillary Clinton got it through, and then CFIUS came back online after that. And when CFIUS came back online, they had said that if we were allowed to do our job, basically, don't quote me on that, that's basically paraphrasing, they would not have allowed that uranium one deal as we know it today to go through. So apparently when Jim was there at that time, when they basically put a lock on CFIUS, Clinton's passed their deal through, and then CFIUS came back online again, opened it up, and what they felt was we would not have passed this if we had our unadulterated say. So I found that to be pretty amazing. Take a look at some questions again. You're on the right track. Okay. You guys are talking about nickel now. Okay. Nickel actually had shot up quite a bit. I was pretty amazed with nickel's. I think it's gone up like 2,000 per ton fairly recently, fairly quickly. But continuing with the notes, let me get down. He also took a look at Trump's slogans, and I found this pretty interesting. Again, this is from the book. Trump's slogans such as "Make America Great Again" and "America First," they're very similar or echoes to Roosevelt's "Speak softly and carry a big stick." Roosevelt even invented the term muckraker as a name for unethical journalists. Roosevelt wrote that this kind of journalist speedily becomes not a help to society, not an incitement to good, but one of the most potent forces of evil. This was more than a century before Trump leveled the charges of fake news and enemy of the people to make the same point. That's pretty interesting. I mean, Roosevelt, I'm not going to say he was the Trump back then, but if you look at, as Rickards pointed out, a lot of the things that Roosevelt did or said is the same things or are the same things that Trump is doing and saying. It's just that we've never seen such a strong nationalist president in over those 100 years since Roosevelt. So for us to see this, it's all new. It's all brand new for us. So I'll continue on a bit. Let's see. Roosevelt, 1912, Roosevelt ran as a third-party candidate for president on a program he called the New Nationalism. He attacked cronyism and political corruption, and on both parts, the Democrats and Republicans. One of the main planks of Roosevelt's platform declared that to destroy this invisible government, to dissolve an unholy alliance between corrupt business and corrupt politics is the first task of the statesmanship of the day. Trump, less articulate, he called it draining the swamp. But make no mistake, he had the same sentiment as Roosevelt. So again, we're seeing some similarities between Roosevelt and Trump, but Trump is no Roosevelt. Rickards wanted to make that clear. Going down a bit, I'll just go more towards the end, where some of the things, Rickards had to say. He did talk about machine learning, which involves machines to make predictions. He talked about AI, and then he talked about how when it comes to traders, a lot of it's just on autopilot already at this point. It's on autopilot. And it's true. I did see this one video clip on YouTube where if you look at the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, you don't see that big clamor of people all over each other's backs, trying to buy, trying to sell. You don't see that anymore. It's turned more or less into a TV set because the traders aren't there anymore. It's all algos. It's on autopilot. Floor of the stock exchange, yes, there's some activity, but it looks more like a TV set now, according to a lot of people. I mean, from what I've seen anyway. But we'll go down a bit more. This was interesting. This was one of the questions I wish I had time to ask him. He talked about MPC, or marginal propensity to consume. It's a simple concept where if you give a billionaire $1,000, she will probably spend none of it because she already has everything she wants and has no need to spend more. But if you give that $1,000 to, let's just say, the average Joe, he's going to spend it on food, rent, repairs, gas for the car, whatever it is. The average Joe is going to spend that $1,000. The billionaire probably will not. So the question I had where if let's say, should the so-called free money that went out to the too big to fail banks, if it had gone into the hands of the people via, let's say, a voucher to pay a mortgage, where this money can only be used to pay for your mortgage, or this money can only be used to pay for this or pay for that. Let's say some type of a voucher, some people call it helicopter money. If it had been used for that, since according to the marginal propensity to consume, or MPC, which he's talking about, would we assume that money going into these areas would be spent and perhaps kickstart the velocity of money and therefore move inflation upwards to what the Fed sees as ideal? In other words, if he had, or if the money had just gotten into the hands of the people would have kickstarted the economy through the velocity of money, and maybe the Fed would have got that inflation that they're looking for. We'll never know because we never got it. But I do strongly feel if we had gotten it, we would have spent it. We would have put that money right back into the bank, meaning we get that voucher. Here's $1,000. You can go ahead, use it. You can only be used for your mortgage. What are we going to do? We're going to give it straight back to the bank, right? So if the bank got it anyway without us spending it, it's just going to be in their hands still. But if it came to us and we gave it to the bank, we're starting to move the currency again, the velocity of money. And that is what the Fed needs. And that's something that we haven't had. That's why the Fed is still struggling. So I'm a believer where the money should have gotten into the hands of the people if they wanted velocity of money to kick in. I could be wrong. I'm not an economist. I'm just looking at it from that point of view. It just seems a bit of common sense to me. But again, I'm not an economist. So I'll go down a bit. I'll just go to the ending already, where he talked about things like what we should be doing. Again, it's a really good book. I hope you guys do have a chance to pick it up. Let me see. It's just a bit more. The gap between rich and poor is growing. However, a leveling, this is what he calls leveling, will historically always take place in which the income distribution is compressed and gaps between rich and poor are greatly reduced. This leveling seems to be a sentiment that people want. That's true. Everybody seems to say rich are getting richer. You know, average Joe's not getting any richer, and they want to see that gap close. Good news is we all seem to agree on that. A majority of people seem to agree. But the bad news is that leveling is only achieved through death and violence as a result of mass mobilization, warfare, extreme revolution, pandemic plague, or a systemic collapse. Pretty ominous. So again, the thing is, a lot of people seem to want this leveling to happen, but Rickards is explaining the way leveling happens is death, violence, mass mobilization, warfare, revolution, plagues, and systemic collapses. So again, those are pretty strong words that he's saying. He continues where the best way to preserve wealth in the face of an extreme event is with a modest portfolio allocation to physical gold bullion. When the 100-year flood does hit, it's too late. It's too late to buy flood insurance. Likewise, when the next financial crisis hits, it will be too late to buy gold at today's prices. The best time to buy flood insurance is when the sun is shining. The best time to buy gold is now, before the wall of complacency crumbles. Completely agree. Your gold and silver, it's going to help you. It's your insurance. It's something that you have to get now before all of these things start to happen. Let's see. What investors need to consider is not the cause of the crash. It will be something, but the consequences. We have to consider the consequences more so than what is going to cause it to crash. Your wealth will disappear or not based on your preparation and your reaction to what comes next. Reaction, we may not have that much time to react, so it really is going to depend on preparation. And once critical systems break down, civilized behavior lasts 3 days. After that, the law of the jungle prevails. Citizens rely on violence, money, remoteness, or other forms of coercion to maintain their positions. Loyalty to country is cast aside. That is probably going to happen. There's not going to be loyalty to country at that point. And because country is no longer holding up its side of the bargain by providing order, tribes form based on locally shared values. An example was Hurricane Katrina, where after a few days there were gangs pretty much looting and unarmed vigilante groups formed that shot some looters, but more often shot innocent survivors who happened to end up in the wrong neighborhood. So again, we need to not only prepare, we need to prepare in all ways, and it's survival. And he goes on to say the key to survival in a true collapse, it's not a bunker, rifle, or private jet. The key is community. You will not survive on your own, yet you might just survive in a community that is prepared to share food, water, labor, artisanal skills. Your skill as a carpenter, dentist, or field hand might be richly rewarded with corn, cheese, milk, bacon. Cities will break down faster than surrounding countrysides because of over-reliance on electricity and transportation networks and their vulnerability to riots, looting, and violent crime. So those were some of the key notes that I had taken, or excerpts. I know that's pretty lengthy, so let me take a look at some of your questions. In the Great Depression deflation environment, gold mining shares gained 500%. Yeah, because it gold and silver is, it's just like I say, it outpaces inflation. It stores value, and it's that safe haven that people are going to flock to. Premier worldwide. You are correct, but Fed is only going to bail out their own friends. They could care less about the common man. Wall Street will always be bailed out first. You know what? Premier worldwide. I'll just share my outlook on this. You know, a lot of us, we have money in the bank. We have our deposits in the bank. We have bank accounts, and these bank accounts are insured up to X amount by, in the U.S., the FDIC. A lot of countries, even Singapore, their money is insured in the bank. Okay, so a lot of people feel like no matter what happens, their money is safe up to a certain level. But the way I kind of look at it is, if a bail-in should happen and the banks take your money, okay, and they use it for whatever to bail themselves out, you and we're going to go to the bank and we're going to tell them, hey, where's I want my money. I need my money. And, you know, because you notice your account maybe is at zero, who knows what it's going to be, and you're asking the bank for your money. Bank is going to tell you maybe something along the lines that we don't have it, or whatever it may be. And you're going to tell them, but my deposit is insured. And the bank is going to tell you, you know what, Mr. John Doe, you're right. Your money is insured. Can you fill out this claim, fill out this form, and we'll get back to you. That's the way I see all of this insurance happening, as far as the deposit being insured, where you're going to go to the bank and the bank is just going to tell you, you're right, go ahead and fill out this claim, we'll get back to you. Now, what good is that going to do for you, right, at that point? And this is why, like Rickard says, keep a good amount of cash on hand, because as Brent Johnson pointed out before, there are a lot more digital dollars than actual physical dollars. So when push comes to shove and you need that physical cash, you're not going to get it, or chances are you might not have it. Even though you have a lot of digits in your bank account, there's only so many physical dollars to cover all of those digital dollars. So again, that's another reason why, you know, Rickards is saying keep a good amount of cash on you. And how you do it, we'd all do it differently, but the point is, don't leave everything in the bank and don't depend on that insurance, because like I say, you know, they may just tell you, go ahead and fill out this claim, we'll get back to you. It's not going to do you any good at that point, right? Dale Val, in 2008 was bailouts. Next time, bail-ins, aka your 401k, your savings. You know what? I agree with you, Dale. Especially you guys with 401k. Now, I'm not giving you financial advice. This is what you exactly need to do. I'm not a professional finance guy who can, you know, who has the wherewithal to advise you on these things. But I will say, take a look at understanding, your 401k statement, you've been seeing it going up every month. Okay. Stock market has been going up. Your 401k statement has been going up. So it's not necessarily only the rich are getting richer. You are also, if you have a 401k, you've been seeing it going up. Thing is, your 401k, and I've said this before, a lot of it is tied to paper, stocks, bonds, mutual funds. And that means if this fiat event, collapse, whatever happens, your 401k is going to take a hit. And if you're a bit older, you're not going to have time to recover. So what do? Well, if you're already buying gold and silver because you think a fiat event is going to happen, you need to take a look at your 401k because that's still exposed. What you can do, there are companies out there who will help you with what's called self-directed IRAs, SDIRA. And what they have the ability to do is they can take some of your 401k, pull it out, roll it over into a precious metals IRA, and now your 401k, or at least part of it, is protected against that fiat event. If you don't do it, chances are, like I say, your 401k, because it is connected to the paper market, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, if those go down, your 401k is going to go down. It's going to take a hit. So take the time to maybe look into it a bit on your own if you can. Take the time to contact companies that do SDIRAs. Ask them all the questions you need to. They're going to help you, and they will help you to take some of your 401k out of the paper system and put it into gold and silver. And a lot of you guys have gold and silver anyway. You understand what's going on, but have you connected it to your 401k? Maybe, maybe not. So take a look at that. Let's see. If merchants take digital money at some point here, who needs cash any longer? Well, again, it's the transition. You need to get through that transition from the current system to the new system. That's the key point. You need to get through that transition. Once that new system comes in, I think we're all going to have to reassess and see what's going on with the new system. But I'm going to say for me, at least, I'm looking at the transition. If you have your gold and silver, your cash, you're going to have opportunities. As Rickards said, you can be your own Buffett, BYOB. Doesn't necessarily mean bring your own beverage. You can be your own Buffett, where you can pick up things, because guys are going to be struggling during that transition, and you're going to have the means to help them out by giving them some form of money, but you're going to be able to pick up opportunities along the way. So you want that cash, you want that gold, you want that silver, you want these things during the transition, food, whatever it is. It's for the transition. Afterwards, no one knows what it's going to look like. But I think most of us agree during the transition, it's not really going to be a pretty nice picture, which is why Rickards wrote this book called Aftermath. Let's see. Where are we at? While they're printing another 20 trillion, the actual commerce will discontinue for import, export, and local delivery. I'm not sure if I understand the question, but there is going to be a breakdown. We're already seeing trucking companies, right? They've been going out of business. And then I think I've even seen some reports, which is why I asked in the community group, if you guys have been noticing that the store shelves are out of canned goods, certain canned goods or things like that, and how badly were they out of canned goods. It's just a small taste of what's to come. But the point is, it really can happen. I mean, it's happening even when things are so-called okay. Let's see. But printing cannot keep up to inflation in an event. Zimbabwe. Absolutely. The thing is, in the beginnings of that transition, when people cannot get to the bank to take out their money, or they're limited to maybe $50 a day from the ATM, that's when you're going to want to cash, the beginning stages. And then I'm pretty sure after that, people are going to lose confidence in the paper. Then they're going to look to other things to be constituted as money. So you want that cash probably to get through the beginning or the first parts of that transition. And then you want your silver gold to carry the rest of your wealth through that transition, or to pick up opportunities, whatever it might be. But yeah, I don't think people are not going to have faith in cash anymore. For the beginning, I think they will, because they're trying to get their cash. So they may have faith in it still, but confidence it's not going to be there forever. Okay. Josie, big nickel shortage coming up soon. Hot metal for the coming years. You know what? That's a good point. Let me pull up the a page on the nickel price, because that was pretty interesting. I mean, I know this is mostly about silver and gold, but I just want to pull up this chart real quick. Let me see. Hang on, yeah. Okay, so nickel, yeah, it had a huge move. I'm not going to say it surprised a lot of people. We kind of knew it was going to happen, but when you look at just July, we were down here, 12,000, roughly 12,000 a ton, and we're here today. You know, we're above 14,000. So it's moved over $2,000 per ton in a fairly short amount of time. So nickel is making a move, which is pretty good. I mean, I think a lot of people have been waiting for nickel, but a lot of people have also been waiting for silver and gold. We've been wanting to see it move as well, and it has. So let's see. Yeah, do join our crisis tracker Telegram group. There's a link in the chat box, t.me for Telegram again, and crisis tracker, where we do share some news that we come across about, you know, coming crisis or some current events that can help us kind of make decisions what we need to do and how we need to prepare. Okay, but for the most part, that's about it. You guys have been excellent. I appreciate you folks sticking with the Jim Rickards interview. Some people absolutely follow him. Some people, they don't really go for what he has to say anymore. But next week, I think our guest, I'm not sure if it's going to be Charles Hugh Smith or if it's going to be Michael Pinto. It's going to be one of those two guys. And so I'll wait for Vincent to type in the chat who we have up next. So Vincent, if you're there in the chat box, is Pinto coming up next, or is Charles Hugh Smith going to be coming up next? Charles Hugh Smith, he's kind of like a, sort of along the lines of like a Chris Martinson. He's fairly positive in his outlook on things. If of course you do certain things to prepare. Okay, so coming up this week is going to be Michael Pinto. So I'll go ahead and roll just a short clip of Pinto's conversation and what he had to say.
But when you get down to the real truth behind why they're lowering interest rates, if you really want to know why, is because they understand that if they don't maintain this 2% inflation target, that bank assets could start to go down again. The housing market could start to crumble again. Stock prices can crumble again. Junk bonds would crumble, the price of junk bonds, and that would wipe out the banking system. So we're stuck in this hyperinflation of asset prices, and they're so petrified that things could correct, because if they correct, the leverage in the system is so great that if they even started to correct a little bit, that would turn into a massive crash very quickly. That's the danger.
Massive crash very quickly. I mean, a lot of guys are coming out and saying this now, and I think in the end we just all need to be prepared. You know, like Rickard says, it's going to come down to community, and as we've been preaching, when these things happen, we're all going to be one of two things. We're either going to be a burden on our friends and family, or we're going to be a blessing on our friends and family. So I got to give a shout out to Kaui back in Kaneohe. Say one more time, aloha to you, and aloha to all of you as well, because I got to get moving on now, because I heard there's something going on that I need to check on. And so I need to go there and show my badge and get in that place and see what's going on over at Area 51. Heard there's a large Facebook crowd that are going to try and storm Area 51. I can say it's a real place. I even have the dirt from Area 51 to prove it. But anyways, again, guys, you all take care of yourself. I'll see you again next week, and be a blessing, not a burden. Saddle up for what's coming ahead and silver up. I'll see you guys next week. Take care. Bye-bye.